87% of America still to this day does not drink craft beer. So does anyone really give a shit about? So for me, what it ended up being was like you start realizing when you really take a zoom out, consistency is more important than quality. It's if you give the consumer the same experience every time, and what Budweiser does really well is they make a beer that isn't the conversation, it's the backdrop to the conversation.
Hey, this is Parker with AccuBrew by Gulf Photonics, and this is Time as an Ingredient. And today we have Kelly Meyer, author of How Not to Start a Damn Brewery and an amazing podcast by the same name. And we're going to talk about some of the things he's noticed in brewing, which I read the book on, it's amazing, and why AccuBrew can help maybe mitigate some of these situations, help you get through some of these things. So, Kelly, how are you? Nice to have been hanging for a while now, having some beverages, visiting breweries in the Austin area, and it's just been wonderful. We're at Jester King today, which is friggin' stunning, staying in one of their cabins and drinking some amazing mixed fermentation beers. It's just been wonderful. So I don't know where to start other than get this bloody book, and whether you already, there's going to be something in here that strikes home. There was a lot of it that did for me. So what would you say to everybody, first of all? I mean, it's hard. That's a big one because there's 10 chapters of mistakes you made.
I say a lot in there.
Yeah, you do.
But yeah, I mean, I would say ultimately the point of the book was a few things. One, I always wanted to write a book, but two, the brewing industry needed almost like a juxtaposition. It needed someone on the other side. It was almost Jess from Brewbound. She quoted this thing to me in an interview I did with her. She's like, the brewing industry has a toxic positivity problem. And I felt like, absolutely. I didn't have a name for it. She put it to that. But at the end of the day, the point of the book was just to say that it isn't always sunshine and rainbows. It can be. Yeah. Maybe it is for you. Yeah. It wasn't for me. Yeah. But the prevailing theory was just that it's always good. The industry's growing. Bunch of breweries. We're all going to make money.
Right.
And that wasn't the experience that I had. And so I felt like I needed to write it down.
Right.
So, and of course, I did it with a lot of effort.
I always tell people there's only one business worse than owning a restaurant, and that's a brewery. And then it gets worse when you put a restaurant in a brewery. So
combine the two, see what happens.
Put the two lowest margin, hardest working businesses, 7 days a week, businesses that you'll ever be a part of.
But yeah, so the point of the book was really to be my experience, but then peppered in with, I wasn't going to sit down and write a book without talking a little bit of shit.
Yeah.
I had some axes to grind.
Yeah.
I had some things I wanted to bring up, but as I did a little research for it, and what you're reading is actually the second version. So the first version was 27,000 words, and this is 55.
Nice.
So I added a lot to it, and there were some holes in the game. And, but ultimately, at the end of the day, that is a fairly succinct version of some of the pain and suffering that I experienced owning a brewery.
Yeah.
And hopefully will help some people at least know what's potentially ahead. And then also, if you're going through it, I think it validates some of the experiences that people are afraid to talk about. We don't want to talk about failure. And
to me, there's the thing that everybody wants to talk about how many barrels they make, but nobody wants to talk about how much they made.
I hate that crap.
Their margin,
If you tell me your barrel number, I'll ask you, show me your P&L last month.
Yeah, exactly. Where did that get you? And it's just, to me, it's so interesting because just even the limited amount of exposure I had, you end up, you suddenly at some point realize, I'm not running a brewery, I'm running a tasting room, I'm running a retail shop, I'm running a distribution, trying to manage that. And there's all these aspects of this that no matter how successful you might have been in one business, now you've put minimum 3 of them under one roof. And you're a production facility, and then you're a customer forward facing tasting room, restaurant, whatever maybe. And then now I'm trying to handle my marketing, social media, merch, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, what I find too is a lot of times people, they say when you start a business, you should always make an org chart based on what it will be at 10 million, right? So you've got a CEO, 3 VPs, middle managers below that, COO, and you know that right now when I start, I'm going to be 8 of these roles, but eventually I'm going to hire to those. And what you find in the brewing industry overall is that most of the breweries, and by that I mean like 90%, never get a chance to hire those roles. So the owner's doing 8 jobs all the time, and there's no way you're that qualified. I mean, I'm pretty good at sales. I was okay at making beer. Wasn't that great at running a tap room. Really wasn't that great at social media. But I'm doing all of these things, and I think that's an unfortunate part that some guy gets in the industry that makes truly kick-ass beer. There's so much more to the story than that, right? There's so much more he needs to know. But
well, that was the one thing where you said something about. I wish I had. I didn't own this book, so I couldn't put highlights in it.
I could probably tell you where it is.
My boss owns it, but if I had put highlights in it, the part about how as long as you make, but if you start with 5 mediocre beers, you're going to struggle and strain to find. There was something where you were talking about that it's not critical to make perfect beers as long as you're making acceptable beers, but the rest of the experience of coming there and is an attraction to people, and you realize that you're not selling. I always say, I used to try to tell people we don't sell beer, we give away beer.
Yeah.
They're paying like a lease fee to sit on that bench and enjoy this space with us and have a good time together with us, and it really wasn't about. You start in this industry when we first opened was like, it's all about the beer. It's just the beer, and then a year or two in, it's like, oh crap, that's not it at all,
Yeah, usually too late you figure that out. Yeah.
It was very important to have good beer and have a nice variety of beers and, fill the holes but maybe that's why people came there, but they didn't come back because the beer was good. They came back because they enjoyed the beer you had and in that space and that experience with your employees and, the vibe that you put in.
Well, ultimately, the book was the 10 biggest mistakes that I thought I made. And I made more than that, but 10 biggest ones. And the ones that I saw that were fairly ubiquitous, that was the first one. So it was focus on quality over branding. And I, like many brewers, was like, if I just make the best beer, I'll win. So if I can make my beer 5, 7, 10% better than the other beer, people will like, oh, okay, well,
definitely.
Here's the chart. I got a spreadsheet. Clearly that beer's better. I'm going to buy that one. And it didn't happen.
No.
And then you find out as you do some of the numbers, going later, 87% of America still to this day does not drink craft beer. So does anyone really give a shit about? So for me, what it ended up being was you start realizing when you really take a zoom out, consistency is more important than quality. It's if you give the consumer the same experience every time, and what Budweiser does really well is they make a beer that isn't the conversation, it's the backdrop to the conversation. So if you can just make a consistent product that never makes them go, what was that? And they can still enjoy the conversation they're having with mom, friends, skiing, whatever it is, it's the backdrop of their life.
Say that again. What did you say? That's a good one. It's not the, what?
It isn't the conversation, it's the backdrop of the conversation.
That's very good. I like that.
So not to plug your product, but at the end of the day, what that means is that the more consistent you can be,
eventually, let's work it there eventually.
The more consistent you can be, I think that's valuable. I think that makes a huge difference.
Exactly, and that's what we try to do. We don't want to. I was talking to him earlier, and it was like we don't want to change what you're doing. We want you to help leverage what you already know and do what you do better, and with more freedom, less worry. Go home at night and not worry so much because we're watching the tank for you and that sort of thing, which I think is insanely valuable. And
well, that was something I struggled with that a lot. And I actually put in there the first 2 brewers that I had were a mistake. They were a problem. And what it did for me as the owner is it forced me in a small brewery to occasionally on Saturday morning on the way to my daughter's soccer game, I needed to go by and test gravity because I didn't trust the guy.
Right.
And if I didn't, I was pretty sure that by Monday something was going to be off or wrong. And if I could have at least logged onto an app and been able to go, okay, well, I know what the gravity is.
Definitely.
It would have made me able to go to my daughter's soccer game and not worry about it. And at the time, I didn't see the value in that as much as I do now that I'm out of it.
Right.
But I will never go back to having to go on Saturday morning before my kid's soccer game.
I have a brewer now that uses a couple of them, and he literally had a guy that was afraid to report a problem.
Yeah.
He was afraid of that. And the guy's never given anybody a reason to, I'm not going to beat you with a stick if the gravity's off today, right? It's not his fault. And he would falsify. I know it's supposed to be 1.5 today. I'm measuring 1.7. But I'm going to tell him it's 1.5. So, so he got to the point where he couldn't even trust, what was happening. Mm-hmm. And I know the man, and I know it wasn't a case of him instilling some, undue fear in people to be afraid of that. And it was just the way that person operated. They wanted to, everything's okay all the time. Everything's okay. And now, he literally, and we had a guy that he manages a satellite location. So the home office needed to see what was going on, but he was going in, like you're saying, because he had to check the temperature every day because he didn't have any way to know what was going on. And so he would either call down and have a front of the house server or manager, I need you to run back. Tell me what all the glycol temperatures are. Is everything on point? And that was hard because, maybe this tank is 80 degrees because there's nothing in it.
Right.
It's just like, that one's okay at that. And literally just putting this in for that alone was the money for him, And so they're using it for not even part of what it's built for, And I just been sold on this because I come from a manufacturing background where everything was documented. Red lines, sheets, updates, drawing reviz, everything had to be meticulously documented. And I see an industry where it's probably even more important to document everything than anything I was ever involved in, and literally almost nothing is documented except gravity and pH once a day, maybe. Yeah. And
on a clipboard taped to the fermenter. Yeah.
And then it gets torn, lost, or stuffed in a 3-ring binder on a shelf and is never viewed again. And we're giving you 96 measurements every day, every 15 minutes, 7 days a week, and it's on the phone in front of you. Bang. And if you want to know whether the batch made in January or in December, was performed because you have made some changes over the year, because we have to sometimes, performed as efficiently as the batch in January, put the two together, you're done, and you can do that from anywhere. And so when I was approached to join this project, to me, it seemed like a no-brainer. Because of my background in manufacturing and documentation, I was like, who wouldn't want to know that stuff? And then I get into the industry and I found out how, very, very meticulous, smart people just need that last little thing to put everything that they've done in one place where they can look at it and be just a little bit more analytical about what they're doing. And because I'm telling you, man, when I used to work with Procter & Gamble, General Mills, yogurt companies, butter companies, and they had labs with hundreds of petri dishes in them in a big box, like some
testing constantly. Yeah.
I mean, they're testing drains every day. Every 4 hours, a drain would be swabbed, and a dish would go in, and every part of the machine would be swabbed. When I first got in the industry, there was a problem with a cup filler, and I didn't have gloves on. And I just grabbed the cups and fixed the thing, and it was like, red stop, pull all the cups, throw them away. I was like, dude, what's going on? He goes, you can't touch that.
Disinfected everything.
Yeah, you just.
That's actually your kind of like how I think of it. You disinfect everything.
Yeah,
you're an infectious personality.
I'm turning red in the face right now just thinking about it. How embarrassed I was, because it was just so. And then I go into breweries sometimes, and they're getting ready to transfer, and they drop a gasket in the muck on the floor, and they just pick it up and put it right back on the hose sometimes. And I was just like, oh, geez, I don't know, man. Is that really the right thing to do today? But I don't know. What your biggest takeaway? And there's a lot. Like literally, there's 10 chapters or
10 mistakes. Yeah.
10 mistakes. Yeah. So your biggest, when I go through here, outside of the massive amount about the perils of distribution, or the perils of thinking I can start small and grow big, or the perils of, how would you sum all this? And literally, this thing is only 200 and something pages. I mean, you can read this in like 3.5, 4 hours. What would be the salient point that you really would like, if you had 5 seconds? And his podcast is amazing. They autopsy a lot of things that are really brave of people to come on the podcast and talk about. A lot of people don't want to talk about their mistakes, and we get that. You put your lifeblood into something and it doesn't work, and it's not always through it's not a lack of intelligence or hard work or anything else. It's just that this is an incredibly complex. So what would you say to all that? That you have 5 seconds to sum up a 3 hour.
I'll get 5 seconds.
Yeah. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. I'll give you 10 to sum up all of that, because it's amazing to me. The more I learn about this industry, how just insanely many working parts there are and how complex it is, and
Yeah, so I think the message overall has changed dramatically I know for a fact it has. So in the very beginning of the podcast, the concept, the book, there were a lot of hatchet burying. And I'll be honest, there was some anger, and some of it was misplaced, some of it was on me, and I shouldn't have lashed out at some of the people I did. I can't take that back, that was years ago. But if you're asking me like the summary of what it is, I would ultimately say that almost everybody I've talked to in the industry today got into it from an art perspective, that they wanted to make something cool and unique and interesting. They wanted to make their own beer. They wanted to have it at the grocery store, their buddies to drink it, whatever. And I don't talk to people who come into the industry understanding that it's a business. It's not just a business. It's a really, really hard business.
Yeah.
So ultimately that's the point, was to let people understand that you can still do it. You can even still lose money. I don't care. It's your life. Do what you want with it.
Some people need it right off, man.
Yeah. But at some point, if you're coming in, you're borrowing money from friends and family. Right. If you're using grandma's money to do the brewery thinking you're going to get rich, I at least want to be the one person who's told you that isn't going to happen. You may have a blast. You may be a better person at the end, but you ain't going to get rich.
And you'll make a lot of wonderful friends. I mean,
it's
the best. I've been in a lot of industries, and I've met some of the best people in this. But I did I used to do these 30-second talks or more, and it was your passion gets you into this business, but you can't let your passion control your business.
Yeah.
And that's not just beer, that's any business, because no plan survives your first few customers. When you think I'm gonna, like you, I want to make all these awesome mixed fermentation beers, and you think everybody loves them, everybody tells you they love them, and then you find out that's 1% of the friggin' entire market of the world.
Right.
Is a awesome saison or whatever, and I mean, we are at Chester King, who I absolutely love. Some of the most amazing beers I've ever had in my life, and you can go in there right now and get a hazy IPA.
And a pale ale, I believe, too.
Yeah. You gotta. What was the thing you said? Don't make what's
popular, make what's profitable.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. It doesn't do you any good. Like you said, you were making all these beers, and there's no churn. There's nothing leaving the shelves.
Yeah.
And so now I'm trying to, and the one distributor who wanted you to do a temporary price reduction to push this beer, and when there was still beer from last year on the shelf, and none of your other distributors are doing this temporary price reduction. And it's such a strange.
Yeah, it's weird. So what we knew in 2009 that would make money in craft beer or beer in general, we've all pretty much ignored over the last 15 years for whatever reason. I don't know why that is, but it's flagships, it's consistency, it's samplings, it's POS, and I get it. We can't all afford to do it, but at the end of the day, you have to. And if you can't afford to do it, don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah. Now, I've literally gone to very few, but I've gone to breweries where no samples, no 4-ounce pours, buy a fucking pint or you're done. And I was like, well, I just got off the interstate, came into your brewery, and you're asking me I want to have 4 of your beers. I can't have 4 pints and get back on the interstate for an hour. So it's a mystery to me sometimes that what goes through. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like I think people are. I don't know how to express that though. That when you go into someplace and they're like, no samples. And I get it if it's a very limited release and it costs you $1,000 or whatever to make it, and fair enough. That I get.
Well, that specific beer, right?
Yeah.
But then have the 4 that you can.
Yeah, but your core beer. I told somebody one time I always allocated minimum 10% on every thing sold, every keg.
Yeah.
That I was going to not make money on, minimum. And they were like, well, that's outrageous. I would never tolerate that if. And I was like, dude, my bartenders are going to give beer away to their friends or maybe a customer that's pissed. That's all great with me because that instills a relationship. And I said, and there's going to be a pour loss. And I said, and I was never wrong. We always came in very close, if not better, than what I projected that keg was supposed to make that day, that week. And it was hard for some people to understand that, it is a 10% loss. Maybe it's more. Now, is it a loss, or is it a marketing cost, or is it or is it shrinkage? Was it theft? I don't know. Maybe,
Did the customer come back tomorrow because you gave him the pint today?
Yeah. And it's like in New Jersey, I used to have people come down from New Jersey and they're like, so when do I get a free one? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, at home, you get 3, you get 1. And I'm like, well, this is Florida.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. Some gin mills up there in the old joints, I was like, well, you're in Florida, it's a tourist town, and you're going to pay for every one. Sorry, I dig you, but I can't do that, It was hilarious.
Everybody wants a discount. I had a manager once when I was back in the fitness industry. People always ask for a senior discount for the membership in the fitness side. And he's like, why would I do that? You guys are the most pain in the ass to deal with. I should technically charge you more.
I should charge you more.
I couldn't believe you said it, but it was truly honest.
Yeah. Dude, I had people come in one time. We had a bartender that we had to let go, and he went down about a mile down the road to another bar, and I lost some customers, obviously. They were following him, and I didn't really give it a thought as to why they were following him. And then one day they came in and like, dude, aren't you gonna give me like a half pour price for a full pour or something like that? Mikey always did. I was like, well, I think that's maybe why Mikey's working down there. Maybe you should go back down the street, because
Mikey was much more expensive than you thought he was.
Yeah. Turned out Mikey was very expensive. He had a great following, and but I was paying for his following. And so it was like kind of ridiculous. But I think when you talk to people about what it actually costs to put a beer in a glass, it's crazy. And now we're asking, lagers and pills and everything are taking off, and we're asking people to pay $7 or $8 for a beer that is much better. But I can get a PBR for $3.
Or a 6-pack at the store for that. For
so
$6.
Why am I giving you $8 for a beer? And I used to always, it was like, well, once again, back to the thing where you're not giving me $8 for a beer. You're giving me $8 to hang out and have a good time with us here.
Yeah.
And
it's for the winning smile.
Yes, it's the fun, But
yeah, well, and the industry's in a weird spot where they have to kind of figure that out too. That I know there are some breweries that just went ahead and raised prices, but the costs of goods sold has gone up so dramatically since 20 that I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it should be more.
Yeah,
consumers should be paying $15 a 6-pack on average, and it's just they're not. So
well, that's the thing. When what was it? There's a barley wine by a brewery I love, which now is like 13%. Comes in a 16-ounce can. I mean, it's a murderously good barley wine.
That's a tough roadie.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it was like $15 for a 4-pack of that, and
that's cheap.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how you make it, and it is really a good part, just as true to style as you can imagine, and there was this like knee-jerk reaction to me going, that's too much, I don't pay that.
I get so fucked up on beer.
Exactly, it does. There's been a study that something about the carbonation is breaking the alcohol out, and because there literally was the same remark about the difference between I only drank this much wine or I drank this much champagne, which are at the same ABV, basically, could be,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can be pretty similar.
And
we're about to finish our cup, guys.
All right. And it was literally, they started doing some tests, and I think it's because of the way the carbonation breaks alcohol out of the system or makes it easier to feed alcohol quicker into the system or something.
Somehow it dissolves in your bloodstream or something.
So I think you've probably stumbled upon the exact right thing, because the carbonation is changing how the uptake of the alcohol.
I found that out when I was drinking the Hair of the Dogs beer.
Oh, dude.
Jesus
What was
Christ.
it, Adam in the Woods or whatever?
He sent me a bunch. So he did the show, and so he sent me a bunch of them, and I drank 3 on the show.
You did a podcast with him.
I was fucked up by the end. I actually left it. I didn't tell anybody this, and I went straight to a tour for real estate. And they didn't know I was drunk, but I was fucked up.
Yeah. They're probably wondering, he's kind of strange. I don't know
why is he so pushy today?
Why did they close? What was upside of it? I never listened to the whole.
He effectively mic dropped it, which I didn't believe him at first. I went through the whole thing with him. I'm kind of doubting that.
Yeah.
But he was just like, and he said the quote was, and I'll fuck it up, but it was like, Why would I sell it to someone who doesn't care about my brand and doesn't want to make as good a beer as me so they can just fuck up my legacy? I can't argue with that.
So he didn't really close. He just was like, I'm done.
Yeah, he still has beer. You can order it online right now.
Yeah.
He did, like, he owns a building and I think he did like a proprietorship rental, all of it, like in place to somebody. I don't remember who it was.
Right.
He wanted his son to take it over, and his son thought about it, but he wouldn't do it.
Adam in the Wood, or was
There's Adam, Fred, Doggy Claws, another one he had.
And even knowing what I know, I was bitching about paying $15 for a 16-ounce 4-pack of an exquisite 13% barley wine that
should have been 40. Yeah.
And they'll know who I'm talking about if I said any more than that. But it was embarrassing to think that I was like, oh, dude, I can't afford that. And I was like, you idiot. But I also remember the days of a brewery in our area was doing 6-packs of a triple. Like, what was it? Like, it was 10% in a 6-ounce, 12-ounce 6-pack.
Yeah.
For $9.99.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, And
there's a brewery not far from here.
Really good beer.
Real Ale. Theirs is like $10 for a 6-pack of, and it's great beer, but you usually can't finish all 6.
No.
Shouldn't. I guess
Didn't have to.
Yeah.
But I also remember the days when we would buy, for the tap room, a half barrel of Victory Golden Monkey for $209 and then sell it at $7 a pop in a 8.5 ounce pour, a 25 CL pour.
Yeah.
And make I think it was about $1,000 a half barrel.
Those are my best friend's favorite beers to this day.
Yeah. Literally could make, I have a poor memory, but I seem to remember we were crashing about a grand half barrel on that.
Right.
Everything's in a 5-gallon, it's hard to even find a brewery in a quarter barrel now.
Well, that's because no one will buy them. We ran into
they
that.
They don't fit into their tiny coolers.
Yeah, a lot of them had like a 1 half barrel or a 2 half barrel one. And for them to have 6 taps, they had to go all slims.
Yeah. And so they're using these tiny, and then they want you to sell 38 16-ounce, 14-ounce IPA pours for $6 and pay for I've seen 6th barrel IPAs from some of these places that were $200 for a 6th barrel.
Yeah.
And I was paying $200 for a half barrel. So 1/3 the beer for essentially the same price. And I can't put it in an 8-ounce pour, 25 CL pour.
Wait, are you trying to tell me there's no money in the bar industry too?
There's no money. There's no money in that. And sometimes, I'll tell you that, man. God bless the friggin' karaoke night and the friggin' trivia night and the whatever night, Well, that's probably enough of that. So this is Parker, Kelly Meyer, who I just met recently, and I'm really digging the experience talking to him. And definitely, whether you're getting ready to start a problem or fix a problem or
you just really like the F word.
You like the F word?
Yeah.
You like to know how to find a porcupine's genitals, which is one of my favorite lines. But one of the things, and don't think that he's trying to scare you, because you could read this and go like, oh crap, I'm in the wrong, this is a bad idea. The idea was to make you sure that that's actually what you do want to do. So, and then once you start your brewery, keep an eye on it with AccuBrew and pay attention to what's going on and the details, and realize that, there is nothing harder in this world to make than a good beer. And then it gets even harder to make the same good beer 5 times, 10 times, 100 times, because like he said, I call it the McDonald's effect. None of us, I don't think, like McDonald's anymore. But when you're on the road and you're hungry, you will go there because, well, I know I'm at least getting the same crap I got.
Yeah.
500 miles back. But
it's the same. It's bad as you expected every time.
As bad as I expect every single time. And so look for us at AccuBrew.io. We've got some awesome resources online to give you an idea. And remember, it's not about buying some equipment to monitor one tank, one batch. It's every batch, all year, year after year, and building up a database and a historical record to keep an eye on things, because you know that you're not going to have the same hops. You're not always going to have the same malts. You're not always going to even maybe use the same yeast. So, or hopefully you're propagating, repitching, and this will help you keep an eye on that and make some solid information-based decisions instead of just, it seems to taste the same, you know. So give us a visit, AccuBrew.io, and we've got some YouTube videos that explain everything too. So thank you so much, and thank you, Kelly. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah, got some awesome Pint House beers from here in Austin, so enjoy that.